For decades, the American Quick Service Restaurant, or QSR, was built on the reliable mathematics of grease and high-volume heat. It was a daily utility for the working class. Then came the receipt that broke the internet. In early 2024, reports of an $18 Big Mac meal at a Connecticut rest stop went viral, triggering a nationwide wave of economic anxiety. The viral outrage confirmed a massive psychological shift. Survey data reveals that 78% of Americans now classify fast food as a discretionary luxury. The underlying data validates this sticker shock. Between 2014 and 2024, average prices across 10 major fast food chains surged by an aggressive 63%. This chart tracking chain-specific inflationary trajectories over the last decade reveals the disparity in the market. McDonald's reached the top of this index, effectively doubling the price of its core menu items. Faced with these premiums, households earning under $45,000 a year severely pulled back their spending, migrating rapidly toward shelf-stable grocery alternatives. The data points to a singular conclusion. The industry has structurally abandoned the traditional high-volume, low-margin business model, permanently decoupling from its working-class roots. To understand why a drive-thru burger costs what it does today, we must measure these price hikes against the baseline metrics of the broader economy. Over the last 10 years, general inflation rose around 21%. Restaurant meals surged nearly 49%. This multi-line chart tracking inflationary pressures from 2020 to 2026 pinpoints the exact moment the market fractured. Following the 2022 peak, the cost of groceries rapidly cooled, dropping down to just 1.2% in 2024. Conversely, the food away from home prices remained artificially elevated. The rate rose by 4.1% in 2024, and economic forecasts show this line staying elevated straight through 2026. Because this persistent gap exists independent of general consumer inflation, the rising cost of a fast food meal is a unique structural anomaly. The cause lies buried within the invisible supply chains and corporate architectures of the quick service industry. The entire quick service ecosystem relies on a singular foundation: the guarantee of massive, highly predictable, and cheap supplies of raw agricultural proteins. That predictability shattered under an ecological crisis. Since 2019, persistent droughts across the western United States severely reduced available feedstock and water supplies. Without grazing resources, ranchers were forced to prematurely sell off their beef cows. This triggered a massive, multi-year cyclical contraction of the national cattle herd. The supply-side constraint produced a severe financial consequence. In 2025, farm-level cattle prices surged by over 20%, pushing the wholesale cost of ground beef to record highs, above $6.30 per pound. Simultaneously, recurring outbreaks of highly pathogenic avian influenza, a severe viral disease affecting bird populations, destabilized the poultry and egg markets, injecting extreme volatility into breakfast and chicken menus. QSR operators run on razor-thin profit margins. They lack the internal financial buffering required to absorb these simultaneous raw ingredient spikes. When the physical supply of beef permanently shrinks, an industry mathematically reliant on commodity stability has no choice but to abandon its low baseline prices. Beyond raw materials, human capital represents the second major cost driver. Historically, front-of-house labor accounts for roughly 30% Pistro's QSR sales. In April 2024, California implemented a $20 minimum wage mandate for fast food workers. This sudden legislative shock provided a real-world laboratory to observe how operators handle payroll surges. Economists analyze this dynamic using the monopsony model, a market structure where large dominant buyers, like multinational fast food chains, hold outsized power over wages and employment levels within a specific region. This Sankey diagram maps a 25% wage increase. The pass-through ratio shows chains used market power, so 60% bypassed owners, passing directly to consumers via higher prices. The remaining 40% is absorbed by halving turnover and radically reducing training costs. Because of this market power and reduced turnover, total regional employment numbers for QSR shift workers remained relatively stable following the hike. The math is zero-sum. Mandated wage increases function as a direct wealth transfer from the food budget of lower-income diners to the paychecks of the restaurant workforce, elevating the meals cost out of the utility category. To protect their fixed cost overheads from inflation and payroll shocks, QSR operators deployed specific microeconomic strategies to restructure how their menus actually work. That meant killing the early 2000s dollar menu. The old model was built on a concept called proportional pricing. Under proportional pricing, a small item and a large item cost the exact same amount per unit of volume, or per calorie. You paid strictly for the amount of food you received. Today, operators rely entirely on value pricing. This drops the per-unit cost on larger items, setting a psychological trap that incentivizes consumers to upsize. This compares small versus large fries. A $2.29 small yields 100 calories per dollar. The $3.29 large yields 145. For $1 extra, consumers get a 108% calorie increase, a 45% value improvement. They perceive a deal while actively increasing transaction spend. Because the marginal cost to the restaurant of a few extra potato strips is near zero, upsizing captures pure revenue. That extra dollar goes directly toward covering the static fixed costs of rent and energy. This feeds into the industry's barbell strategy. Chains fiercely protect the optical baseline price of their flagship burgers to maintain a perception of affordability, while quietly doubling their profit margins on secondary items like fries and beverages. This pricing architecture mathematically punishes the consumer who only wants a small, basic meal. Absolute low-cost dining has been engineered out of existence. Modern fast food chains operate as sophisticated logistics and data extraction engines, prioritizing digital efficiency to manage their massive scale. The shift begins in the lobby. Self-service kiosks carry a heavy upfront deployment cost, typically running between $25,000 and $50,000 per location. The return on investment is immediate. A bank of kiosks eliminates the need for 1 to 2 hourly employees during peak shifts, directly mitigating the financial shock of the $20 minimum wage. Furthermore, these kiosks utilize AI-driven upselling prompts to systematically increase average ticket sizes by 20 to 30% over orders taken by human cashiers. But the ultimate gatekeeper to affordability is executed exclusively on smartphones. It is a system called algorithmic price discrimination. Digital users actively trade their personal data, their privacy, and their time for targeted digital coupons. These app-exclusive bundles are the only mechanisms that replicate the historical value tiers of the early 2000s. This rigid reliance on technology creates a distinct readiness gap, alienating digitally insecure consumers, particularly older adults, who are unable or unwilling to navigate the app ecosystems. The result is a two-tier dining economy. Analog customers ordering at the counter pay the full luxury premium, effectively subsidizing the targeted discounts of the digitally integrated user. This reveals the central paradox of the QSR price shock. Despite viral consumer backlash and an objective, documented drop in lower-income foot traffic, the corporate financial health of major fast food brands remains robust. Corporate parent companies are largely insulated from commodity and labor risks by the franchise model. They extract a steady percentage of royalties based entirely on gross sales, regardless of how much the franchisee pays for beef or labor. But even at the franchise level, the numbers hold up. This bar chart tracking four-wall EBITDA, a metric used to evaluate a single restaurant unit's operating earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, shows significant improvement. Between 2022 and 2024, the average Burger King U.S. franchisee saw their EBITDA grow from $140,000 to $205,000. By aggressively raising prices, quick-service restaurants successfully closed the value gap between their menus and premium competitors, allowing them to compete directly with fast casual and casual dining brands for middle-income dollars. While fast casual brands are successfully capturing the high-value weekday commuter traffic, quick-service brands are adapting by relying heavily on hyper-local neighborhood traffic to sustain their volumes. The quick-service industry has successfully tested the absolute limits of its price elasticity. The era of cheap, non-discretionary fast food is permanently over. It has been intentionally replaced by a high-margin, data-gated premium experience.